Next, we have a public hearing on amendments to the Londonderry zoning ordinance relating to the use table, flood overlay district, delete Route 28 and Route 102 performance overlay districts, and references to Route 28 and 102 performance overlay districts. The following sections are proposed to be amended. Section 4.6.6, performance overlay district, Route 102 corridor. Section 4.6.7, performance overlay district, Route 28 corridor. Section 6.3.10, Route 102, performance overlay district, conditional use permit criteria. Section 7.6.D.7, signs permitted and prohibited by district. Section 7.6.D.8, signs permitted and prohibited by district. Section 6.3.11, Route 28 performance overlay district, conditional use permit criteria. And this was, I think, enacted back in 2002 because of pressures from the, concern from the community of pressures of growth, big box stores, and so forth. But the performance overlay district was intended to be temporary. Anything with government that's temporary becomes permanent. So here we are, 20 years later. Finally addressing it. We had one attempt at it that I think had complicated things, was to remove the POD, but combine all the commercial areas into one. That I know failed to gain traction because we had a meeting with all the landowners, and there were concerns, so the board dropped it. But this is just a removal of the POD, and they'll be using the existing zoning that we had before 2002. So, Kelly.
Mr. Chair. So as you indicated, we held a work session on the proposed zoning amendments, which are to remove the 28 and 102 overlay, or performance overlay districts. The consensus from the board at that meeting was to proceed with a public hearing, which brings us to this evening. The two overlay districts were first adopted in 2002. The intent at the time was to assist with keeping the two corridors in line with the then 1997 master plan. That master plan had objectives such as regulating development to ensure it could be supported by planned infrastructure such as widening I-93, as well as continued increase in new development. As the board is aware, the town has experienced significant growth since 2002 and since the 1997 master plan was adopted. And we currently operate under the 2013 master plan, which identifies both the Route 28 and 102 corridors as retrofit growth sectors, and talks about that particular growth sector being assigned to areas that are already developed. These corridors are now experiencing development and redevelopment interest, which presented an opportunity for staff to evaluate the need for the overlays. And at the direction of the board and council, we proceeded with that analysis, which you'll find detailed. Ben's adding it to your,
Yeah.
I don't think it uploaded.
Do you see us all freaking out right now?
It's there.
Where is it?
You're
Where
all,
is it?
you're all calm and cool.
It's there.
It's in the email Dropbox.
Is it in there?
Yeah.
It's in the
Okay.
email.
It's in the email Dropbox.
It's
Okay.
in the stack too now.
Yeah, it's in the
It
file,
should be in there
in
now.
the folder.
Yeah, I made a hard copy of it because you never know what happens with a
It's the
computer.
same that was,
Oh, you're so old school.
Yes,
All the old guys do that.
never
the same
fails.
that was
All
presented
you
on
old
the-
guys do that.
I didn't.
Thank you. It's on our computer now.
So this
Oh, I
evening,
just want the record to show that Johnny has rejoined the board, so we've got 9 voting members.
And did you read into the record that I stepped down for the second?
Yeah.
Yeah, 4
Yes.
hours.
Yeah,
ago.
yeah.
So we're seeking a recommendation to the council for the amendments. Would you like me to continue?
Yes, please.
So with respect to the 102 overlay district, through the analysis that we conducted, there were 15 lots identified as undeveloped and underutilized, lying within the C1, C2, and C3 zoning districts, and totaling 238 acres. Within the 28 overlay, there were 11 undeveloped and underutilized parcels identified, spanning over the commercial 1 and commercial 2 zones, and totaling about 36 acres. So I'll pull up what I just read, just so you can see it. So what I provided is the detailed analysis that shows the uses within the 102 and 28 overlay districts and how they operate with the overlay present, and then how they would operate with the overlay removed, meaning it would defer to the underlying zoning. So, for example, if it's a commercial 2 property with a 102 overlay, the overlay is removed and it defaults to the underlying C2 zone. I also provided the actual red line
Could
of
you
what.
say that again? If it was a Route 102 property with a 120?
So if you have a property that's zoned commercial 2 with the 102 overlay, if the board, if we were to remove that overlay, the zone would be commercial 2 only. So it would fall to the underlying zoning district that exists today.
I had a question if I could ask. With the warehouse, maybe I'm not understanding this, but in the warehouse, it says up to 250,000.
So by way of a conditional use permit, depending on which zone you are in, you can, the warehouse storage use up to 250,000 square feet is permitted.
Okay, but there isn't a size restriction, well, but then it says up to 75,000 in retail sales.
Correct, so again, depending on the zone that you're in, that is permitted, a permitted use, up to 75,000 square feet.
So one of the things with the POD is it restricted the size, so we're still leaving the size restrictions in?
So the dimensional requirements of the overlay districts relate to landscape buffers and setbacks and building height. So removing the overlays does not change the already defined uses in the use table. It just changes, again, depending on the zone, what uses will remain permitted or not permitted by way of the conditional use process through the overlay districts.
So if you had a 78,000 square foot building in a C2 zone, it's not permitted?
For retail?
Yeah.
Correct, it's, for example, in the C1 zone, the retail sales establishment up to 75,000 square feet is permitted by right. If you want to exceed that, you would likely need a variance, whether the overlay is there or not.
But with the overlay, you weren't gonna get a 75,000 square foot building in lot for lot. One has.
It would depend on the parcel, but
Yeah, yeah,
Green-
the
the green
parcel
with the,
size.
yes,
Extra
with the
green space
overlay,
in the
it
overlay,
would take into account
you get
the
less,
landscape
a
buffers. and the
smaller size building with the overlay. Take the overlay off, and all things being equal, you probably could get a bigger
There's a-
building in there.
Potentially, yes, depending on the lot.
But if my memory is correct, prior to the POD coming in, the Route 102 came in first, and then it was the Route 28. It was based off of, well, it came in subsequent to the Home Depot going in. And prior to that, it was that you could have any size building. And it was, I always thought it was like the anti-big box overlay, which restricted down to either 75,000 on Route 102 or 125 on Route 28. And then at some point in time, it must have been, that came into part of the zoning. Because I don't ever remember there being a restriction prior to the overlay, the performance overlay.
I don't believe the restriction was directly related to the overlay districts. I think through time, the uses permitted within the zoning districts changed or things were added.
I don't remember.
Yeah, that would occurred, I think, irrespective of the POD. I'm trying to remember when it occurred. It would have to predate I think the POD, but I know Home Depot is, I think it's 135,000 square feet, and you look at the size of Hannaford and Market Basket and so forth, so.
I remember it to be a zoning without a size restriction prior to the
I think there was a size restriction, but I'd have to go back and
I'd
look.
have to go back and look at that
Yeah.
specifically.
Because I think it's, I don't know why we're putting a size, just my opinion, but I don't know why we're putting a size restriction on these things.
At the end of the day, isn't the lot size gonna dictate, I mean, you can't put a 75,000 square foot building on a 2 acre lot, right?
But you could combine
Probably
several
not,
lots.
but these zoning amendments are, are to remove the
can't,
overlay districts,
yeah.
not to change the
Correct. It's two,
uses.
two different things, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at.
Jake, you could combine several lots, and then you've got the.
Yeah.
Or you could go up.
But I know at the time of the POD, the community had very strong concerns about big box stores, so.
Special exemption.
But we're here to lift the POD, not to rehash the zoning, which we can do at a future time.
Are you done?
Yep,
I
I'm
guess
here to
so.
answer questions, so.
Yes, you answered my questions, thank you.
Can we hear from the public? They've been here a long
I would
time.
love to.
They've been here for a long, long time.
Okay, the board is relinquishing its input to go to the public. Board had, okay. Are there anyone would like to comment on the relief of the POD from the Route 102 area and the Route 28 area?
Before you do start, this is probably the longest meeting in my history of meetings, so thank you all very much.
We haven't been around the old days, Jake.
No,
We said we can stretch this to 2 a.m., you know, that's,
I
that's
will.
that's how it was, and that's when we met every single Wednesday night. But, welcome Laura, and just identify yourself for our records, please.
Sure. My name is Laura Gandy. I'm an attorney at the law firm of Divine, Millimet, and Branch in Manchester, New Hampshire. I'm here tonight representing Tom Estes, who's a property owner within the Route 102 Performance Overlay District. And I do have a handout, if I could just...
Oh, sure.
May I continue? So we're here in opposition to the removal of the Performance Overlay District, and the main reason is the reduction in the allowable uses. Currently, for my client, there are 19 uses that he can enjoy, and that's use category, that's not actual uses. So there's 19 use categories that he now enjoys with the Performance Overlay District on his property. The underlying district for his property is an AR1, then you put the commercial overlay over it, and that gives him 19 additional use categories that he now enjoys. That's not the amount of uses, that's just use categories. So for example, currently right now he can enjoy a restaurant, but that could be a Burger King, it could be a McDonald's, it could be a 110 Grill. So there's a lot of different uses that he can enjoy in each use category. If you take away the Performance Overlay District, he loses 15 use categories. So he will no longer have the ability to enjoy 15 use categories, which include dwelling, multifamily, mixed-use residential, nursing home, business center development, group child care center, recreation, commercial, retail sales up to 75,000 square feet, professional offices, repair services, restaurants, school, private service establishment, storage, self-serve, and the 2 types of warehouses. That's just for the AR1 property. Other properties in this area are also going to suffer the same fate if you remove that performance overlay. You do have an industrial 2 property on the Route 102 overlay district, Charles George Trucking, I believe it's something different now. That's an industrial 2 property. They, unfortunately, is going to suffer a same fate, not as bad as an AR1 district, but they're going to lose 13 use categories, not 13 uses, the ability to avail themselves of 13 different use categories. And I spelled those out for you in my memo. C3 property, again, suffers a similar fate. They no longer will be able to avail themselves of 11 use categories. So that's a big change for these property owners within, this is just the 102 district. I didn't even get into a detailed analysis of the Route 28 district. But so now you're taking property owners' rights away, which brings me to my second point. It very well could be construed as an unconstitutional taking, inverse condemnation, or eminent domain. And as the board is aware, I was the associate planner for the town of Londonderry during 2019 when we did undertake to look at the commercial performance, the commercial overlay zones. And during that time when we had a public hearing, I'm putting on my planner hat for the town, when we had that public hearing, the public came out in full force, basically saying there was a good showing, and one of the top concerns was you're taking away my use. You're basically doing an unconstitutional taking, and you're taking away my use. And what Colleen did, our approach at that point in time was not what's being put forward today. What we said at that point in time was we're going to take the overlay districts and we're going to combine them into a commercial performance zone
Performance overlay.
that would still kind of maintain some of the integrity of the area. And, we had some performance standards in there, landscaping, and the public, didn't necessarily like that too. But the main concern that I remember was you're basically taking away my rights to use the property in a way that I've been able to enjoy and I have enjoyed for 20 plus years. You can't do that. And if you're going to do that, then you need to pay me for that. And I think at that point in time, town staff was like, okay, let's just kind of back off, let's regroup, let's see what's going on. And nothing really became of that. Now I'm going to direct your attention to what happened to my client. He has an AR1 property. Currently, he has Estes Town Country Store, what everybody's familiar with. So if he wanted to right now, he could sell that property, and he can market that property as a commercial property with 19 additional commercial uses. So the value to him is substantial. If he wanted to sell 39 acres now, he could do so. You take away that performance overlay zone, only thing he can do is sell that as an AR1 property. So the value, let's say his property right now is worth 39 acres in Londonderry, let's just say $2.5 million. Somebody wants to come in, they want to develop a commercial use on that, that's great. You take away the performance overlay district from him now, he has AR1. That value of his property is going to drop significantly. And who's going to make up for that loss for him? Is somebody going to compensate him for that loss? Again, I'm just putting that out there for the town that the issue was in 2019, that issue is present again today. Inverse condemnation, an unconstitutional taking, just something for the board to be aware of that could be a potential thing that would come their way. So again, you have a reduction in value of current loss to my client and in future loss to my client and many other of the property owners there as well. So I'm going to put my planner hat back on. The proposal in front of you today is just eliminating the performance overlay. So you're not doing anything else. You're not trying to keep the integrity of the land uses intact, is what you should try to do as planning for the community. You remove that performance overlay district, and if you look at the second page of my handout, where I gave that to you, so you take off the performance overlay, now you have a mix of incompatible land uses that's disordered, that's disjointed, that provides no cohesive design to the Route 102 corridor, which is a major corridor in Londonderry, one that Londonderry prides itself on. And part of the reason why I believe in 2002, the town put on the commercial performance overlay to have that cohesiveness in design, structure, architecture, landscape. You take that away, you're going to have, if you look at that map, you're going to have an industrial property next to an AR1 property, next to maybe a commercial 3 property, next to a commercial 2 property, next to a commercial 1, next to a multifamily with no cohesiveness. This is a major thoroughway in the town of Londonderry that the town should pride itself on to make sure that you have some type of performance standards. And that's what the commercial overlay district does for the Route 102 corridor and the Route 28 by taking it away and not putting anything else there. I could put a house now on 102. The guy next to me could have the industrial. So I don't think it's giving the right thought by removing it and not putting it with anything there. Back in 2019, that's why we didn't do that. That's why we didn't say, let's take it away and just leave it like that for all these reasons. We took it, the proposal was we're gonna take it away, but then we're gonna add a zone to kind of keep that integrity, the compatibility of land uses, all the things as a planner that you wanna think about when you're planning for your town. Taking it away right now, you're not doing that. You're leaving a hodgepodge of different uses with no performance standards and nothing for a major thoroughway in town. And I know, again, when I put on my planner hat, when I was helping to plan for the town, we talked about what's the thoroughway in town, exit 5, that's like the gateway to Londonderry. 102, you get off of exit 93, you exit 4, you come down, you're going through Hudson, that's a main thoroughway for town. How do you want that to look? Part of the performance overlay district was put there so it would look a certain way. You have streetscape requirements, you have landscaping requirements, you have all these things that are there to help with an integrity of design in the planning for the town. And I know it was mentioned, the 2013 master plan, I believe Kelly mentioned, the 2002 master plan, but then we fast forward to the 2013 master plan. In that master plan, there was no discussion of removing the overlay districts. There was discussion, as Kelly pointed out, of, the retrofit, the growth sector, and throughout it all was the importance of keeping those areas to look a certain way. And let me just find what this is. On page 39 of your master plan, what did you hear? Many people mentioned Route 102 as a place in Londonderry that they didn't find appealing. They wanted to make sure it had a certain look to it. They talked about the suburban retrofit of keeping a certain design look to that area. There was talk about form-based components to deal with, the character and community design of that area. There was never any discussion of just letting that area fall back to the underlying zoning districts for the reasons that I just spoke to you about. When they talked about the South Village Suburban Corridor retrofit, your master plan says the Route 102 corridor links Londonderry and serves as the catch-all destination for many needs. Physically changing the appearance and functionality of Route 102 by rebuilding the street line as a tree-lined boulevard and locating buildings close to the road will signal to drivers that they have entered an important place, naturally slowing traffic. So it's not coming right out, because master plans, they're just guiding. It's not coming right out and saying this is what needs to be done, but it's putting forth a vision for Route 102, removing the performance overlay district and reverting back to numerous disjointed and disordered underlying zoning district is not sound planning for the town and not what the master plan calls for. But most importantly, what are you doing to the residents? What are you doing to economic development for those people that own that property? And right now, the performance overlay district, as the board is aware, it's an innovative land use control. So it's one-stop shopping for folks. So if I own a property that's zoned with a commercial performance overlay district, the intent of that is to allow me to come to the planning board. I don't have to go to the zoning board. It's a one-stop shop that if it's administered properly, one-stop shop, I can come to the planning board, I can get waivers from the planning board, from the zoning ordinance. Now, I don't have to go to the zoning board. I can get everything done here. So the intent is for it to be business friendly. It's to promote economic development. That's what the performance overlay districts were developed under, was the innovative land use control statute that makes business easier and development easier for folks in Londonderry. You take it away, now that's gone. So that innovative land use, nice little thing that the town was trying to do for businesses and economic development is now tossed aside. And what that does to my client is he has a commercial use, right, and that's allowed by the overlay district. You take that overlay district off from him, he has now a legally existing non-conforming use. So if he wants to expand his country store, under the performance overlay, he could do a site plan, go and say, I want to put an extra little building on there, I'm going to be fine. You take that overlay district away from him, he can't do that anymore. He's subject to, what I have in my little memo for you, is 8.2 existing non-conforming use that he now has to go to the zoning board. So he has to go to the zoning board, he has to seek a variance, and then he has to come back to the planning board for site plan review. So now you've just added another layer of bureaucracy, and I know the town in the past year has been talking about getting rid of that type of dialogue, that you want to streamline the process for folks. You're not doing that here. My client now has to go to the ZBA to get a variance, and anybody else that's here that has that now their use is going to be categorized as an existing non-conforming use, they now have to go to the ZBA to get a variance if they want to expand it. So if my client wants to expand it, if you take away that performance overlay, he now has to go to the ZBA, then he has to go back to the planning board. So if the town's focused on economic development, this isn't the way you want to do it. You don't want to make it difficult or more difficult for business owners in town to expand their property. You want to promote economic development. You want to be able for businesses to come to expand their businesses without having to go to the zoning board, then going back to the site plan. The innovative land use control that currently exists allows for that. But now you're putting my client in a precarious position where you're affecting the allowable uses on his property. You're taking away his right to use the property as he sees fits. You're on the verge of resulting in possibly an unconstitutional taking or inverse condemnation. You're making it difficult for future development. You're putting forth a planning method that's incohesive, that has hodgepodge of incompatible land uses. You're affecting the aesthetics of a major corridor in town. And for all of those reasons, we're asking that this board make a recommendation to the town council not to ask the town council to promote this, because you're leaving it in an area of disarray. You are going to create a disarray on Route 102 where there's traffic concerns. The town is aware of the Route 102 corridor study that talked about traffic concerns as well. Taking it away with nothing in its place, in my opinion, is not a sound planning technique, which is going to result in many unhappy residents and business owners who own property in town, resulting in a loss of their use of the property and a possible unconstitutional taking.
Okay,
That's what I got.
thank you.
And I don't know, Tom, if you wanted to add anything?
It would probably be better off if I didn't.
Okay.
It's really not nice, so.
And I'd be happy to
But I
answer.
would guarantee if any one of you were in my position, you wouldn't like it, would you?
And I'm-
Right, Tony?
Absolutely.
That's right.
And I'd be happy to answer any questions
Yep,
that the board
this
has.
is, we have public hearings, we learn stuff, so we need that input.
Here's a
Yep.
question for you.
Sure.
So like, as much as the POD enhances your life, or your property's value, it does other things to, like, on Route 28, there's a lot of smaller lots. And when the POD came into place, you had to have a 3-acre lot. Or you had to go get, special exception or what have you. So I tend to agree with you that there needs to be something else, but this isn't necessarily the fallback. But that being said, there is as many cases where the POD is hurting property owners as it is helping in your case. So, and then if we take the position that the minute you change a zone, it could be just deemed as a taking, then do you also take the position that you could never rewrite your zoning? Because anytime you rewrite a zone, there might be changes in the zone?
I got a question. Shouldn't you leave that up to the property owner?
For what?
No, he's talking, can I respond? So, so for your first question, yeah, there are smaller lots on Route 128, and I think one of your properties, the 21517 Rockingham Road, you were able to, well, you should have been able to avail yourself of some of the unique characteristics of that, because instead of going to the ZBA for any type of relief, you should have been able to go to the planning board and get a waiver. And that's a big difference for folks, because if they're going to the ZBA, there's those 5 criteria that they need for a variance, and that's tricky. That a variance are not supposed to be given lightly. There's those 5 criteria that you have to meet. Instead, for those smaller lots on Route 120, Route 28 corridor, you were able to, or you should have been able to, come into the planning board and ask for a waiver for some of those dimensional relief requirements. And that's a big plus for those smaller lots. So instead of going, because those lots are small, they're non-conforming no matter what. With the Route 102 overlay district on them.
They became non-conforming when the POD went in.
Right, but I think some of those are smaller too. Well, regardless, but the nice thing about the Route 28 overlay district is you're now able to, if you need additional relief to develop your property, you are able to go just to the planning board, not have the strict criteria of the variance to seek relief to get things done, and you had that one-stop shopping.
Right, but before, you could have a 1 acre lot and develop it. When the POD came in, the minimum lot criteria was 3 acres. And to answer your question, yes, I think everything should be up to the property owner. I think we have too many regulations. So, I think if you own the property, you should be able to develop it the way you want to develop it.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And to answer your second question
But
about.
that's not the way the world runs, unfortunately. We're dealing with.
No, and you have regulations, and that's the, to answer your second question, is the amount of regulations or what you're doing, whether or not that constitutes a taking. So if you're just like doing one little thing, like changing maybe like a setback requirement, no, that's not gonna be a taking. If you're taking away, in my little chart, you're taking away 15 use categories from an individual property owner, that's problematic. This isn't just like, we're doing a setback requirement or, saying you have to have a bigger landscaping thing going on. Those things okay. And when you're looking at the analysis for a taking,
I'm not saying it's okay.
But no, but I'm answering your
I'm
question.
just saying, as much as it may help in this situation, it hurts in other situations too. And I
Well-
don't necessarily know that I have the answer for you, but I'm just saying that.
No, I mean, I'm not here to, I'm not a planner for the town anymore. So the thing is, you have these use categories that you're taking away, and that's that could be construed as a regulatory taking that you need to be careful about.
Tony?
Yes, thank you. So, this is a classic example of unintended consequences, okay? In municipalities throughout the United States, this happens all the time. This is why you have public hearings. The ironic thing is, for the past 30 years, I've been schooling boards like this, and school boards, and land use boards, and town council meetings. Steve will tell you I've been to a few school board meetings. He's back there writing notes. And the ironic thing is, y'all are schooling me, and I thank you for coming forward. There's a workaround for everything, right? So case by case, sometimes needs to be done, sometimes it doesn't need to be done, whatever. But without citizens coming forward to explain their individual issue, you can't make progress, And so I thank you for coming forward and explaining from one landowner's point of view what the result would be. That's the unintended consequence. and I've been doing it for years. And now I got schooled, so thank you.
And if I can just add, back in 2019, when we talked about this, again, this is when I was employed by the town, back at the March 13th, Colleen Mayu, and I believe everybody knows Colleen, she stated there would still be unintended consequences from removing the standards. So it was noted back then, and again, this particular fact pattern that we're dealing with now is more concerning back than what we were trying to do in 2019, because you're not replacing it with anything. You're literally just stripping something away. When we tried this back in 2019, we were trying to be mindful of the uses and all those other things to not take it all away. This is just taking everything away with nothing in its place, and that's concerning for us.
So, Kelly, Ben, just a question for you. I assume that all the property owners affected were notified of this proposed change.
Yes.
Did we get feedback from 100% of the property owners?
I
And what
met with
was the
several
result?
residents in office and via phone, and they were supportive of the change, both in the 28 and 102 overlay. I met with a woman who owns multiple property on the 28 overlay district, and she was happy to know that she would not have to think about the dimensional requirements of the 28 overlay district for her properties that are currently undeveloped, because she viewed it as a deterrent to be able to develop her property.
So,
Those commercial or residential?
Commercial.
Yeah, and I think for sure, there's gonna be some people that benefit from it, but we also need to be mindful of there are some people that are gonna be hindered by it, and we gotta figure out a way to help them.
no, I agree 100%. So were there any other people who were against it that you
I did not
received
directly
feedback?
hear from anybody against the,
And just refresh my memory, what was the impetus for doing this, undertaking this task to remove the two PODs?
the board and the council asked staff to look into the removal of the 28 and 102 overlay districts, and so we proceeded with an analysis of every parcel in those two overlays, produced the data, and concluded that a majority were being underutilized and that were undeveloped.
Why did we undertake it? I'm just curious,
I
why did
think
we,
it's because the town
just to
council,
reduce the
town-
regulations?
Town council asked us to,
Okay.
because I think it's on one of, maybe 2 years ago, it was one of their goals was to, remove the POD.
Well, we looked at the original intent, and the original intent was talking about, expansion of I-93 and big box stores coming in and trying to prevent that from happening, because we didn't want 102 to look like South Willow Street.
Yeah, and that's why the POD was just to slow down, because people had come to, well, both the council and the planning board at that time, say, we need a moratorium, we need to, we need growth management. The thing is, the statute does not deal with commercial or industrial, it just deals with residential. And any growth management ordinance in the state of New Hampshire, what we have is a temporary measure to allow the community to catch up on the infrastructure. Once they've met all, the infrastructure is in place to handle the population, then, you have no reason for a growth management ordinance. So you had to demonstrate your deficiencies, and then really the period of time has not been specified. No one's gone to court yet to really test that at all on, basically, we said what happens, if we needed schools are overpopulated, and it goes to town meeting 3 times, and it gets rejected every single time. That's the way the townspeople feel. But yet growth management says you're supposed to be addressing the shortfall, you should be building schools. So it's kind of a very conflicting thing. And it's more, we've had growth management before, but it's more of a can of worms, because there's a lot to, keep up with, because we had a very complex formula, or at least it was simple, looking at, our own population growth of the 6, I think the 6 communities around us, and then looking at the school population, look at the amount of indebtedness you have, and then there was some other things too. So it all go into a formula. But we don't have to have that. It expired, and that was, one of the town council's desires was, let growth management lapse.
Just another note, there are 6 AR1 lots in the 102 overlay district, 2 are undeveloped, and there are no AR1 lots in the 28 overlay.
So, it feels to me like there was two different intentions, one for 102. I mean, 102 and 28 are two different areas. They have two different sets of problems, right? And it sounds like the property owners on 28 were all in favor of removing the POD?
Well, you have a property owner on Route
I was
28
gonna say,
over
I
here.
think we gotta hear
I
from
don't
them
know what her
first.
opinion of it is.
Well,
I've just been waiting, and
Yeah.
I know
Yeah,
that
can
you
we-
are still on.
Yeah, well, why don't you come to the microphone here?
Story, so why don't you come on up?
Just real quick, before she starts,
Be
just
careful.
You can
No,
sit.
no, I've been sitting all night.
I just need,
real,
I just need your name and address,
Sure
please.
thing. I'm Leanne St. Laurent.
real
I
quick,
live,
before you start,
Yeah,
did
yeah.
anybody else have any questions for Mr.
Well,
Estienne?
I just wanted to say one thing. I completely empathize with you, and you understand what you're saying. But couldn't it be said that the performance overlay district is doing the same thing to other people's by preventing them from being able to fully utilize their land?
Right.
You know, like, so
But that's
you
the,
absolutely have.
That I see.
have
that's the
that.
unintended consequence.
But that's in
Exactly.
place.
So
Yeah.
one way or another, somebody's land is not being able
Right.
to be
But it's
used
in
to its
place.
extent.
So the question is, what's the workaround? Because there's always a workaround.
Yeah,
Always.
there-
Yes, there's gotta be a way, but I think this lady would
Quick-
like to talk.
Quick question, I got a quick question.
This lady for, then we
All right,
can do
and
the
then I'll come
question.
back to him.
ready?
How are you?
Just
Hi.
name and
Tired.
address, please.
Maybe I'll have 2 questions.
I actually have 3 maybe. I'm Leanne St. Laurent. I live at 73 Chase Road, but via inheritance of my mom's property, I'm now an owner of 225 Rockingham Road, which is just right down the road from Giovanni. We were neighbors when I was a kid. And
The White House?
is it the what?
Is that White House to the left of Giovanni's?
Mm,
225.
no, it's like right at the top of Smith Lane. It's set way back.
Oh,
It's
okay.
right next to the freezer warehouse. Right next to the
Thank you.
freezer warehouse. Yep, you're welcome. I'm not really sure if I have an opinion or not. And the first question is this move to remove the 102 and 28 overlay districts a package deal? Or can they be handled separately? Route 28 separately, Route 102 separately? Because I know a lot of times when things come to vote before the town, you have to vote for the package and you can't parcel things out. And sometimes there's like parts of that package that you like and parts of that package that you don't like, but you're forced to vote on the whole package.
This is not I don't look at this as a whole package.
Okay, so it's like the
It's-
two
it's all
things
po-
can be, because I understand the AR1 with the commercial overlay allows much more uses, but along Route 28, most of those properties are already C1 or C2. And then you've got the performance overlay over it. So my question is, does the removal of the overlay in that area that is already commercial, that now has the overlay over it, does that make it more desirable for development or less desirable for development? And I don't know. And I know that our parcel is 6 acres. It's not a huge parcel like the one on 102. But it is a parcel that would be developed nicely for commercial use. My mom had been living there for, 70 some odd years, and it was residential. But, commercial has been coming in. There's a storage facility next door. There's a freezer warehouse next door. Giovanni's parcel finally is being developed. For the longest time, Route 28 has been stagnant. And, you drive and you talk about coming in off of exit 5, and here we are in Londonderry. And then you just drive up Route 28 and head north, and it's just like junkyard after junkyard after junkyard. And it feels like now there is finally some reasonable development. coming along. And I've heard people this evening talk about beavers and bobcats and things like that, and it breaks my heart. I cry to think of my mom's parcel, all the, being, it's gorgeous woods, it's 6 acres. It's like that was my playground when I grew up. But I understand the reality of everything else around us, commercial coming in. We're right between exit 5 and the airport. So that segment from exit 5 north really does need to have some kind of development coming in. And I feel like over the years, it's just been, nobody's been wanting to do anything there. So what would the removal of the performance overlay do for property owners on Route 28 who would like to have a developer come in and say, hey, that's a great parcel, there's 6 acres. And our lot is really a nice, it's not real big, but it's flat. There's hardly any wetlands. It's gorgeous land. And we'd love to have somebody come in and have a nice project to go in there. Because I know it's not gonna be, if I were, it's not gonna go residential for sure. Nobody's gonna wanna build a house there. It is commercial, but I don't know, what's the result of this on our property? Completely different situation than an AR with an overlay of commercial than a commercial with an overlay of commercial, which may have made it more restrictive. I don't know. You tell me, because I don't know.
I think the restriction is with the dimensional requirements of the POD. Even though the underlying zoning is commercial, it's principally commercial along the.
And what about the permitted uses? Is there any taking of permitted uses?
That's something.
And
to,
I don't know of that. Like,
Apparently it is.
Yeah, I think it
Maybe for
involves
somebody's
that.
in AR1, but would there be any permitted uses that go away if your parcel's zone C2?
The warehouse and storage up to 250,000.
You can still do that in C2.
Oh, and you can see, yep,
Two.
our parcel's right up there, 126
Yep.
in with
So
the green
the-
outline.
Private schools. Group childcare.
And those are things that would, so,
You would not be able to do.
that you would not,
You would lose them if the performance overlay district is removed. So there, can I comment? So there's not many if you're already zoned a commercial property, there's not many uses that you're going to lose compared to an AR1. But I believe in every use category or every underlying zoning, there's a loss of use. So it may not be as great as my client, but I believe every
So I can answer your
Yeah.
question. So your C2 property, the uses that are being removed from that when we remove the overlay are significantly less than if your property was AR1.
okay, so it's less than if it were an AR1, but there would be losses of use.
The private school
Okay.
and the group childcare.
Is that all, or are there other uses that are lost? And what's gained?
So what's gained is that the removal of the dimensional requirements that the overlay imposes, such as a 20-foot landscape buffer or your building height that dictates additional buffer requirements,
Okay.
So
depending on what you want to
the-
do.
But
the
there's
buffers make your buildable lot smaller.
So, yeah,
And I
less.
think that's why a lot of us, we've heard that, but never thought of something like you, but we've heard plenty of times with Route 28 where nobody can do anything with their lot because of how tight it is. So here we are thinking,
Yeah, and I think that's why so many properties
let's
just remain
let's remove some layers of
unsold
the
for the
onion here so
longest time.
we can, give you less setbacks to have to, less dimensional requirements to be able to build on. What did you say would be, that she wouldn't be allowed to do?
Private schools, group childcare,
She would also
And mixed use.
use residential.
I've got it, thanks. Mixed-use residential.
Mixed use residential.
But that should be left up to the property owner. I'm just saying, that should be left up to me to make that call.
And the thing is, like, when you're, to kind of just piggyback, like, your question is, are you going, like, I think your question was, what's more desirable or less desirable?
Yeah, let's
It's-
keep the conversation with the board.
So if it's more or less desirable, it's going to be your allowable uses. If I'm looking to buy a property, the first thing I'm going to look at is what can I do on that property? What are the allowable uses on that property? That's usually the first thing that I find, wearing now a development hat, is that's what I'm gonna look at. What uses can I do with my property? Removal of the performance overlay district, I think under every category is removing uses that are allowed for these particular properties. What's less desirable, I think, Jake, is what you were saying, some of those performance standards make it difficult to develop the property. But to kind of offset that, it's an innovative land use control, so you don't have to go to the ZBA. You can come to the planning board and seek a waiver for those dimensional requirements instead of going to the ZBA and trying to get ZBA relief. And the waiver standards for the planning board is much easier to attain than a ZBA criteria.
Mr.
for
Chair, all due
variance.
respect, how many, in regards to this public hearing, how many people can
Once,
be at
once
the
you
podium at the same time? Because right now, this is just getting way too
yes,
confusing.
it's
going
a
to the
little
back and forth.
confusing,
It's
I
all
think.
great information, I'm just trying to absorb it, but it's getting way too.
There's gotta be some other.
Yeah,
people.
and
Yes, because it's interesting to hear it. I mean, it's information, it's helpful to us.
Can I ask,
But
is there a way for, like, in Mr. Estes' case, is there any way or ability to, this is further down the road, but grandfather his overlay? If it, I mean, it's evident, it's beneficial to him.
You could
I don't think,
You can rezone it.
yeah,
Well-
I don't think out of that, on your lot, on the 39 acres, what's, how much of that is, not that it, I guess, matters, but how much of that is actually buildable? Because you do have an easement on there through the town, right?
It's almost 7 acres.
7
So
acres.
basically, where all my buildings are,
Is where
that's
you're-
all buildable.
yeah,
So
yeah.
if I wanted to take an excavator and plow everything down and put something up, I should be able to, whether it's a commercial building, whatever.
Yeah. So I guess that is what I'm asking, is that would there be a way to,
So if someone came in to me and said, well, hey, we'll give you for that 6.3, almost 7 acres, we'll give you $2.5 million or whatever the dollar amount may be, and then you take away my overlay,
yeah,
and now what's my land worth?
yeah. That's,
Crack.
That's
That's what it's worth.
that's why I'm
And
asking
then
if there's
I
a way
don't think
to,
you guys are gonna
grandfather.
refund me my money.
that's why I'm
Yeah,
asking if there's a
okay,
way to
that's where we're at.
Yeah,
grandfather.
because I think we gotta take
We
a
got the
look at
point.
the uses, the real change in the uses and the
Well,
effect upon the
By option.
value
Who
of the
wants- who wants
property.
it? Who doesn't want it?
Yeah, let's one talk at a time here, please, so we can,
yeah, but
really get a grasp of this. I think it's a little more, it's definitely very, very complex, because people are, for the last 20 years are doing uses that the underlying zone does not allow. So we gotta take a look at keeping those uses there. How do we do that? That's something we're gonna have to figure out. But also, the dimensional requirements, some are probably needed and some probably are not. And, I mean, at this point, we're just trying to get some input from the people that own property there and how they feel about it. Because there's,
So basically,
there's
I
real-
got one other question. So let's just say I want to get rid of my store and I wanted to put it in a steakhouse, but my overlay was gone. Now I can't do it, right?
Correct.
correct, yeah,
So,
yeah.
I'm not saying I'd put it in a steakhouse, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, but I mean, the uses that are on 102 are different from what is up on 28. There's some big differences. And the part toward exit 5 of Route 28 is actually mixed-use commercial. So you can combine different uses together. Maybe that's something we should look at, is a mixed-use type for certain, certain areas. I mean, we can't do spot zoning, but at least, and what we tend to look for is the continuity in uses. Because the whole premise of zoning is you don't want to put different uses together, because then you get complaints. And that goes back to old New England. Old New England was designed with no zoning whatsoever. And of course, there are a lot of complaints and everything. But I want to go to Bruce, I think.
Question for Kelly. Do we have the ability to make a modification? Instead of removing, can we modify the performance overlay district to become
Sure.
more inclusive of certain? So speaking to the north end, the 28, removing the restrictions of the setbacks, making it more conducive to land use without removing the overlay district.
We can look at that, for sure. We can look at anything. We can look at handling the 28 and 102 separately. It's
I'm
really,
More just asking, just out of curiosity, like,
yes. I
right
mean,
now, we're
that's-
talking about rolling back, but instead of rolling back, could we amend to become more conducive to land use, which I think was the original intent of the direction of the town council and the planning board, was to make it more advantageous for building and use. of
You're
the-
saying keep the overlay but get rid of the dimensional requirements.
Or
Just as an
Setbacks.
as an example,
Yeah.
making it more
It
conducive
would be to modify
Yeah.
it to.
to, using a parcel of land, as brought forth here, where they could put a nice apartment building in there because they've got better use of their lot because they've lost some of the dimensional requirements of setbacks. And in Mr. Estes' case, to retain those abilities to put in a steakhouse, which would be really nice. But also to use his land however he so chooses, either a country store or a steakhouse or whatever else. I'm of the opinion personally that you should be able to use your land as you so choose.
Agreed.
And the less bureaucracy, the better, but there still needs to be regulation, right? In my opinion, regulation and bureaucracy can go not hand in hand. They should be separate.
You gotta keep them, keep
You
them
should
separate.
protect public
and
interest, but you should also protect the interest of the property owners
Yeah,
as well.
because there's a lot of fine tuning really with zoning, because it's a very sensitive subject. It's the, reason for the most litigation that occurs in the country, so his uses. But I want to let this lady talk
Yeah, so
first, and then,
Yeah,
I'll come back
I
to
came
board.
in here tonight thinking that I was going to be presented with just an either or decision. Either we keep it or we get rid of it. But because we've come forward,
I think at
we've
first-
heard like the separation, consider 102 separately, consider Route 28 separately. And even when you consider 102, your suggestion, grandfather it in. Or your suggestion, keep the overlay, but remove the restrictive parts of it. And now we have a lot more options that weren't on the table. And also, I know a little bit more now myself.
I think, Kelly, you could correct me if I'm wrong. Obviously, tonight, we're here to make a recommendation for the council one way or the other. So, from there, whatever the recommendation may be, we have the ability, or the town council has the ability to make some necessary changes as they see.
Yet the town council actually will have 2 readings. If we make a recommendation to the town council, they are the governing body. So their first reading is it's introduced, the second reading is a public hearing where they take public input also. They can basically do what they want. I mean, you can go directly to the town council if you have that ability also. But the council usually put it back and look for a recommendation from the planning board.
Mr. Chair.
I know Gianni wanted to talk.
Can I
Uh,
just,
you- what-
can I just
what-
ask real quick if they have any more questions, or we have any more questions for these 3? Because there are more people in the public here than the 3 of them.
Yeah,
Is all I've been trying to get at for like 20 minutes now.
yeah, Gianni?
Well, I was just gonna say, could you, it's a question for Kelly, could you make it an optional overlay where you could, if you wanted to take advantage of Mr. Estes' uses, you could opt to perform you know, have the setback requirements, et cetera. And if you didn't want to, you didn't need to do that, you could develop your parcel underneath the underlying zone, which is C2, C1, C3, I1, whatever.
I don't know exactly what that would look like, but I'm a little hesitant on the optional piece. But I could certainly, it's something we can look at if that's what the board would like
I
us
think
to
it would
Yeah,
come
yeah,
down to
yeah,
making a recommendation not in the favor of it and then going from there.
Oh, yeah, not tonight.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
to me, there's nothing. So do you have any more for us?
I just had, well, it may or may not be related, and you may or may not be able to answer it tonight, but I know there was a lot of talk about traffic on the Vista Ridge projects, but I'm just wondering, north of Vista Ridge, are there any updates about road improvements in general on Route 28, widening, additional lanes, turning lanes, the regulated intersections, anything, or is it, because it's just kind of like a free-for-all out there?
There's nothing in the state 10-year highway plan for it, so at least the next 10 years, there won't be anything happening. And usually
Because
the
that's
state-
really, that's
Well,
what makes development
They're,
real
Stonehenge,
tough.
Stonehenge and 28,
No,
but
28.
that's just that right there.
She was asking north of-
Yeah,
Yeah,
north of exit
28.
5, so
Two.
between exit 5 and, say, the intersection of 28 and 128.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything on
What
the,
about the
I thought
Mammoth
Mammoth and
Road
Rockingham.
and Rockingham Road intersection?
Yeah.
Mammoth and
I thought
Rockingham.
something that was gonna be done at that intersection.
Yeah, I keep hearing that Smith Lane is gonna get, like,
oh, yeah,
Mammoth
What's-
yes,
Road
what's up with
That
that?
just deals with the intersection, it's not the whole roadway. And I know there's problems with the whole roadway, but it's a state highway, it's up to the state to do, we can push the state and so forth, but, I think we did, for the, Stonehenge in 28, we, pushed to our legislative delegation and other connections.
Let's hear from some other people, please. They've been
Yeah.
here
yeah,
for a
I'll
long
sit
time.
down.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? I think I see some stirring back there, so, oh, Steve.
I was looking at him.
No, you're up there first.
Thank you, Steve Young, 12 McGregor Court and 15 Parmenter Road, if you want to bring that up. And also a corner lot at Pillsbury Cemetery. And thank you, Chairman Rugg, for staying so late. This really reminds me of Northgate meetings. So for those of you who haven't been on the planning board very long, these meetings used to go till 2 or 3 in the morning, like every time. So
Every Wednesday night.
I'll be quick, but I do have some history to give, which I think will be helpful, and I think I actually have a solution or something that could be blended into a solution. First of all, there was a question on the board earlier asked. I never got notice for this. The property owner of record is Kathy Wagner. Kathy and I have a contract, and we're also married. I'm at the property quite often, renovating it, lifted the barn, rebuilding it, rebuilding the house, but we never got the registered letter at all. So I don't know what happened there. And I thought it was odd because I heard about it from another one of the speakers tonight. Since in 1990, I'm sorry, about 3 years ago, Kathy and I volunteered and we came in and all the faces had changed in the town hall. But we met with them on the last hearing that we had on this and gave our opinions on it. And there were opinions in there, particularly associated with historic properties that you might have and different things you might be able to do. So I was surprised that we didn't get noticed. I want to go back even further, though, than other people went tonight. So first of all, 15 Parmenter is right now in the POD. It is 4.5 acres, though it hasn't been surveyed in, I don't think it may have ever been surveyed. There's one marker from 102. It is a historic connected farmhouse. The one-third house was built in the early 1700s over on Nashua Road, and it was relocated with oxen onto the property when two brothers had an argument. They then built the big house, and then they built a little house, and then they built a back house, and then they built a barn. And that's the architecture of the property. They also built a second barn. There was a grand barn that went out, unfortunately, it was right on Route 102. So when 102 came through, they tore that barn down. And there's a big hill there on the south side of our bank barn. And that big hill is actually the barn buried underneath there, along with the stones from the barn. So when 102 was built, we didn't have zoning in town. So eventually zoning came to town. Now, what happened is, and by the way, reason I know all of this history is, he's still here. So somebody came into my office and they said, we have a barn and house on 102, and we know it's what you want. I said, okay. I actually thought it was his place. Yeah, with the silo. So, but I found out it wasn't. It was 15 Parmenter Road. So Bill Longmaid made me tour the property with him for months and before I was allowed to buy it from him. And I had to promise all the different things I would do and wouldn't do to the property. He actually grew organic cucumbers in the 1970s. I'm still putting the organic cucumber boxes in the recycle bins. There used to be greenhouses in the back, in the middle of the field. So when zoning came around, somebody came out to the homes, or through some government process, they said, what do you want us to do? What do you want us to do with this property? Do you want it commercial or do you want it residential? And Bill said, residential. The guy to the northeast of us said commercial. The person that owned his property said commercial. So people had a choice in what they got to pick. Now, we didn't have a choice with this POD. The POD came in, and frankly, in my opinion, it was a few members of a town council that just wanted to stop big box stores, period. And there were things like Trader Joe's and Cabela's. Trader Joe's was up in your area. Cabela's. All it was is let's just stop these people from building any buildings like this. I think that one of the solutions might be just asking. Now, we don't have commercial zoning, but we bought the property because we did have commercial zoning. We bought the property because we had a commercial district. I had Janos come to the property before I bought it and had him look at it to say, what could we do with this property with the overlay district? And he explained the different things we could do and the site distances and where I could relocate the driveways to, because I've got 3 driveways now, all grandfathered. He's like, you really would be better to have one driveway and put it here. And so I already went through that whole process. And the real challenge with this performance overlay district is not the size of the buildings that everybody's been talking about. It's the distance from the lot line. So at one point I drew it up, and if we were to add a building to our property, it would be in the back behind the farmhouse, which, by the way, intrudes onto the right-of-way about 50 feet, because I didn't build a road there, but that it's in the road right-of-way issue because it's so close to the road as far as the setbacks, even as a residential. So I can put something in there, but it's got to be really small in the back, because it has to have, I think it's, and you might know it, 40 feet, 45 feet.
With
50,
the-
no, it's not 10 feet. Pardon me?
Which side, from the rear or the front?
Performance Overlay District
40.
buffer,
40.
40 feet. So 40 feet of my 4 acres, and I'm lucky it's square, and yours isn't square. So you're gonna have to build a bowling alley, 1 lane. So this zoning that came in where they asked everybody what they wanted to be commercial or residential, it left this patchwork quilt. And I know our area, I mean, the area that I'm in, some people pick the commercial and some people pick the residential. And so for us to just say, well, let's just get rid of the POD, I did plan on using the POD possibly someday. I planned on using it commercial. At the time I bought the property 20 years ago, there were 15,000 cars that went by it. Today, I think there's a whole lot more. I do know it's a more dangerous intersection than 28 and Pillsbury, the way people come around the corner. So my recommendation is ask the people that are in the districts, what do you want? My choice is, somebody came up with a hybrid tonight. My choice is make it commercial. The only burden on the town, if you make me commercial, is you have to come in once a year to inspect the house to make sure it's still residential. Otherwise, my taxes change. I'm okay with that. Bill Longmaid moved to the village, and he moved into a house that's across from the old factory, and it's commercial. And they have to come into his house every year and inspect it. You know, that's okay. And I can still do things like special exceptions, which I will do, have a business in the house under those rules. But I sure would like to be able to use it for what I bought it for. That's it for me. Anybody want to know anything else about history? Thank you.
It'll repeat itself.
It does. Oh, and I'm sorry about that phone call. That was, okay, I'll say it. That was Kathy.
She's
She wanted
asking
to
where you
know.
were.
She goes, please, no more traffic.
Yes, sir. Name and address, please.
Yeah, my name is Dan Joswack. Our residential address is 31 Windsor Boulevard, and the property address is 254 Nashua Road, so just right next to Steve's place. He's our neighbor. So first, Laura articulated very well everything, that I was thinking as I was going through and reading through this. So thank you, Laura, for that. For us, we already have kind of several strikes against us from a property perspective, the size of the lot, the shape of the lot, different aspects of that, the parking lot, the inability to move, to expand, to do really anything there where we are.
The little office building.
It is, yeah.
It's a
The
nice front lawn.
brick front. Yeah, it looks like a house, really.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. And this is we're in a C3, and so we're losing several, advantages to the property. So again, the things that Laura mentioned, apply to us here. I know the question came up, what was the impetus, what was the motivation for this? I'm not sure I heard a clear answer, other than the town council wanted, and then subsequent to that, the discussion that you guys had in terms of the Route 28 area and, size restrictions and things like that associated with that. Those things, certainly understandable, but it would be nice to understand why the town council is asking you guys, what's the underlying motivation, because I don't see any of that in the paperwork that we've reviewed. So, but given what we're seeing here, the fact that we'd be losing some significant amount of usability for us, we'd request that, that you deny that or recommend against going this path. So I don't want to take up any more time for that unless you have some questions.
No, I think we're in the hearing mode right now,
Okay.
so, but thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Name and address, please.
Oh,
Yeah, Ted?
sorry, I was gonna have just a suggestion of potentially looking at making amendments before you send this to the town council. Instead of just saying,
Let's hear.
Let's hear from the audience. Sure.
How we doing? Blaine Dorman, own property 506 Mammoth Road. Kind of was up in the air, didn't really know what was going to go on tonight, or kind of confused. Everything's kind of, I agree with the 102 and the 28 split, how it's different. I'm one of those, I got an acre, so I think it's actually going to behoove me and be beneficial that I'll get more setback off the lines and all that. So, but I feel for Essie's, it's completely out of line, and to me, it's stealing. And a lot of the north end in Londonderry, there's not so much people that want to build it up, or even my father owned that property 45 years. I bought it off him, started a business on it. Could do whatever. We parked our stuff there. We had everything going for us. It was great. All of a sudden, more residential came in, and before you know it, we can't even do anything there. So it's one of those, it's tough, and I want to get it back to where it was before, not run a business out of it, but at least be able to park there. So the only reason I'm here tonight is to make sure I'm not going to lose more than I've already been taken away my whole life. So I don't know if you can answer that for the 28 taken away. I think it's a good thing, but at the same time, you were saying some things about maybe daycare was off that list.
It's the mixed-use residential, the daycare, and the private school.
Okay, so that puts me at like 5 things I can do.
Is that for resident, is that for
That's-
C2?
That's for C2.
Two.
Yeah, which is the.
So that's the uses that are in addition to your already permitted C2 uses with the overlay district. So your already permitted C2 uses are nursing homes, live-work units, community center, public facilities, public utilities, rec facilities, religious facilities, business center development, drive-through with, as an accessory use, drive-in establishments, drive-in theaters, financial institution, hotels, manufacturing, motor vehicle, station limited service, commercial recreation, retail up to 75,000 square feet,
Oh, it's actually getting better.
professional office, repair
The more that-
services,
yes.
restaurant.
Kelly,
Want me to keep going?
I might
Kelly,
want
with their
to.
performance overlay, what is the front and side setbacks
The,
in his lot?
it's dependent on the building footprint.
Okay. Without it, what is it?
C2?
Yeah.
That's good. I'm not gonna remember right now.
All right, well,
I'll pull it up.
see what I'm
Is
getting
that
at.
something on there that's something for storage as well?
Self-storage is permitted in C2.
So me saying, hey, I'm parking my truck here for the night, that's not considered storage? How, in front of your guys' eyes? Like I'm not trying to get all my equipment back. I'm not trying to make log piles. I'm not trying to go crazy. I'm literally just trying to park equipment so I'm not paying $2,000 on a lot, which my dad was grandfathered into it. And then because we had people move in next to us that didn't all of a sudden like it, we lost everything. Literally fine you $500 a day to park here, just crazy, crazy stuff, which forced my father out of the town, and I'm not going anywhere. So I just want to know what I can do for the next step so I can get the property good use for what I'm trying to use it for, not just live in it, because I'm living there with my family now as well, so.
Guess it just depends what you're trying to do,
Okay.
but I'd be happy to look at it and
Yeah.
talk about it with
Okay,
you.
no, that's perfect. And I'm green to all this. I'm just a hard-working American, so. Thank you.
Kelly, I guess all I was asking is his setbacks, are his setbacks worse with the performance overlay on?
Potentially,
Yeah. That was all I was trying to figure out.
Stay right there for a minute. So I've known Mr. Dorman and his father for
Hold on.
years.
Tom, Hold on, please. She's answering.
I'm
the
sorry.
question.
Yes, Kelly's got the floor.
I think I answered you, no?
I don't think
It
so.
depends, it sounds
It
like it
depends on the
depends on
building height
the
and
size
what
of the
he's trying to
building
do.
and whatnot. Yeah, so it's kind of an
But
open-ended
I have up
question.
the setbacks for the commercial districts,
Yes,
60, 30, 30.
yeah. They're tight. So, all right. Yeah.
Little on 0.75.
Okay, anyone else?
Anyway, I just want to say one
No
quick
left,
thing.
Tom.
I want to say one quick thing. I've known him and his father for years. And when I hear stories like this, when they've been there for almost 50 years and he parked his trucks there, and now we have these out-of-staters that come in here and they bitch and complain that they don't want to see trucks. Well, you know what? That's too bad. That's their living. My living is wood as well and mulch. And some people don't like to see the mulch piles on 102. You don't like it? Too bad. Go back where you came from. It's not right that he's not allowed to park his trucks there.
Yes.
I don't think it's right.
There's always ways around it. We have other North Enders that help me out, but I shouldn't have to pay on commercial C2 property to park all my.
Be able to park your trucks
Just live in your truck.
Park the truck
That's
there.
another
That's-
problem another time, and I get it's late.
Yeah, we'll have to see what the building inspector says,
Yeah.
how they,
Yeah, I'll have
so
to.
we don't do any regulation.
Thank you, everybody. Thank
You're welcome. Well, thank you for the input. I think
So,
we've,
can I get a point of clarification from Kelly?
yes,
So, just so everybody knows too, like the multifamily concept would go away with the POD going away, right?
Depends what zone you're in.
Say
Multifamily
C2,
is allowed-
C1,
It's allowed by conditional use permit in C2,
without the zone? Without the overlay, I mean?
yes.
So without the overlay, that's an example, I think, of what I was trying to get at. Without the overlay, it's allowed, and you've got less requirements you have to get to.
Yeah.
Okay, Steve.
We should have a separate workshop. No, we should just.
Oh, yeah,
talk.
we gotta go back to ground
We'll just
zero
go
and
in
everything.
circles.
But I think the thing we need to do is, well, listen to Steve.
That is true.
That you need to listen
The
to Steve.
multifamily goes away. On the residential. Right now, I'm in the overlay district.
For the residential, it does. For the commercial, it doesn't.
For residential, the multifamily workforce is permitted by conditional use. For the commercial districts,
One of the things we considered was veteran, tiny houses, complexes for veterans. And that option would be gone. That was what we
Okay.
thought about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That's thanks to Bob Clegg, by the way, so, which is no longer with us.
Okay. Well, thanks. We thank everyone for the input. I think since we have this before us, we'll recommend to the town council that we, will recommend to deny it. And I think we need to go back to the drawing board and take a look with the input that we have received tonight. This kind of reminds me when we went to, in 2019, with a proposal that was probably the first step, but needed quite a few other, modifications to it to get there. So we're gonna have to look at some point to keep the uses that are there in place, because when you give someone something, you don't take it away without a fight or an argument. So
So, Mr. Chair,
It's
Do we, if they're looking for a recommendation, we need to take a vote, correct?
yes.
Okay. So if we are recommending to deny, we would be voting in the affirmative.
To deny.
Voting in the affirmative to deny,
If the
just so we all
the motion's
understand.
made that
Can we
way.
separate the two areas? Because it seems like a lot of the concerns are from Route 102.
Well, I think we gotta take, I think we
I
gotta,
would-
we gotta take a closer look.
Yeah, I think we just need to deny it right now,
Yeah,
you know?
because
If you want to separate them tonight, you can.
yeah.
You wanna separate them both?
It's identified as a separate section of the ordinance.
So my vote would be the same.
Yeah, for my vote would be the same, but should we just separate them to separate them?
well, I
Not
think,
tonight.
We're
No?
yeah,
changing,
we,
I think we should.
we
but
can
not tonight.
separating, I think the answer for both of them is gonna be the same.
I'm just answering your question. You can if you
Yeah.
want.
But Bruce, you
But, so, this has been a good exercise because
Fantastic.
what I hear from the public, which is what I wanted to hear, is they want less restriction, more development. That's what I'm hearing, right? Because by,
More choice to do.
More choice.
yeah, more choice to develop as you see fit, right? That's a good message. I like that message.
that's from the owners, but then what about the neighbors to these?
Well,
these
that comes
changing
up
too?
when it gets
Because
into
we're
the-
talking about
when we
public
have
hearing.
another public hearing.
Yeah,
Right, but what I'm saying is the public hearing process works because we're hearing what the public wants,
Yeah.
right? Now, it's a subsection of
It-
the overall public, but
Yeah, because we
You
want to
know.
hear from the owners of the property, but also eventually the abutters to those properties.
Because people who you talk to, who may have been in favor of that, didn't show up because they've already talked to you, and they're thinking, you know, it generally tends, it's like reviews online, you know, I mean, 500 people have a great experience, nobody says a word, one person has a bad experience, and they post it on 15 different sites. And I'm not saying that you guys don't have, absolutely, but I don't think we're getting a
I
complete
think you
cross-section
gotta
of the
separate the two
landowners.
though, because it affects the folks on 102 differently than it affects the folks on.
no,
Route
I think you need to separate it, but I also think we need to kind of re-engineer it and take what's there and maybe make it a little bit more refined, right?
Yeah, and I
Based
think-
upon the feedback that we've gotten from the public.
But I know how this goes. If we vote it down, we'll never address it again.
I think
I
it'll
think
be,
that's wrong. I
Hey,
think we
hey,
vote it
hey,
down
look.
and we start to address it.
You know, we talked about it in November of 2022 or 23, whatever year it is. And the public didn't want to do it. And I think, I hear all their concerns, and they're Route 102, they're in AR1 zones, and you're not hearing from the folks that are in C2 zones on Route 28, so.
But it depends on how we close it out. We can direct Kelly
To
to
pursue this more.
pursue it more, further study, or whatever, and come back in 2 weeks, a month, or a month and a half, or whatever. I mean, this is classic how this should work,
Yeah.
in my opinion. You start out with something that you think is gonna help people, landowners, and drive revenue. You hear from the direct users, right? In this case, it's the landowners who say, well, take a look at this, take a look at this, take a look at this. This is classic. Then it goes back to study, then it comes back again, you rework it, reconfigure it, and you come up with something that's better, that works for almost everybody. It's never gonna work for 100% of the people, but even for the ones that it doesn't work for, there's gotta be workarounds. There has to be, there always is. It's a question of finding it.
I think it's being flexible, you know, so
Yeah.
that people can kind of design and have some creativity, and that's what the innovative land use, statute.
And in this case, I would want to separate it.
Yeah.
I would want
Have
to
to
deny, I would want to deny both, but I would also want to direct Kelly and her team.
To
of
see what we
people
can do
and
to make it
then
work.
To say, come back and show us, based on what we heard tonight, what will work for more people, or
everybody, or for every piece of land, or most of 99.99% of the land, and for the ones it's not gonna work on, we're gonna do this instead. Because there's always workarounds, there's always a way to do it.
Well, the perspective
theory,
of more use, more landowner choice, and one-stop shop with the planning board as opposed to going to multiple different venues, I think is a resounding message that I heard tonight.
Yeah.
And which is in line with what my expectations.
I agree with definitely all of that. I think just from a process standpoint, we would be putting, I agree, separate them, putting two things on the table to go to the council, and then I think isn't the council the one that directed us or directed staff to look into it for a recommendation?
They wanted us to.
The council would have
yeah,
to say yay or nay,
Yeah.
and then say, potentially at the, if it's a nay, direct the staff to rework it. Do we have the authority to even ask Kelly to rework it?
Yes.
We will
can
look
always
into
ask.
Other options, that's the point of the public hearing process.
Okay.
That's why this is more of a all or nothing, so we can hear what the other parts are that you want staff to look into.
Yes, because I think we gotta look at 102 separately from 28. I think, I think 28 is, I think, much easier to address than 102, because 102 is a quilt work of, different uses and zoning, and I think the POD at least put some continuity to the uses that could be done. I think there was a level of usefulness for it, but the dimensions were restrictive.
Mr. Chair, what's the best way to separate these? So,
Just 28 and 102.
right, but so what we have before us is a public hearing on amendments, right? So we're gonna vote to either approve to go to the town council or deny going to the town council as a recommendation.
It's not
How do
denying,
we-
it's not denying to go to the town
Sorry,
council.
to
It's
not recommend to the
not
town
recommending.
council.
The sections cited in the hearing are separated by overlay.
Route 28
So you
overlay
can
and
separate
102
them
overlay.
if that's how you want to form your recommendation.
So we would make a motion to recommend
Not to
the
recommend.
102 corridor performance overlay district as one motion. And then we could do another motion for the other one, which would give us a yay, nay.
You
on
could
each.
recommend that the council move forward,
So-
approve, however you want to term it.
Can I make a motion?
28.
Please,
But-
please.
Can I make a
please.
motion not to, I'm gonna do this in two. Can I make a motion not to recommend to the town council the Route 28 overlay, POD overlay amendments?
To not recommend.
To
I
not
I
recommend.
second that.
Just
So,
to
now,
not-
just remember, I'm doing them both. I'm gonna not recommend both, but please remember, I'm saying not recommend. So if you do not want this to go forward, you need to vote
could-
in the
You
affirmative.
could phrase it as a positive motion, and then it
And
gets
then we
denied.
deny
All right,
it.
we'll do it
Let's
that
just do
way.
it
then.
that
Either
way.
way, I'm just.
It's just
We'll do
a
it that way then,
it's
that's
just
fine.
the reverse of it. 'cause
That's fine.
As long as we understand what we're voting for.
That's fine.
Yes, you'll be clear on that.
So motion
So I'm gonna
not
make
to
a,
recommend 28 overlay to the
No, it
council.
would be
No,
a
you just
motion to
told me to do the
recommend.
opposite.
I'm just, that's the motion you just made, so.
yeah, I would like to make the motion not to recommend it.
Yeah,
Okay.
And I second it.
No, I wanna keep it that way.
I second that motion.
I've got a motion
Seconded.
to deny recommendation, and I have a second from Lynn. Is there any further discussion by the board on that motion?
Oh, I
Ann.
was gonna say, it's not what we came here to vote on. It was to vote on this package deal.
We came to give the
We-
town council a recommendation, and I have a motion on the floor to make a recommendation.
We
not-
can separate them
Make a
out,
motion not to recommend it.
because they're only advertised together,
Correct.
so, but they are
While they're
separate.
advertised together, they're two separate things. So, again, I'd like to make a motion not to recommend.
So if you
Route
vote
28
in favor of this, you're saying that the planning board's not recommending,
Correct.
not recommending relieving the POD from Route 20?
We're not recommending removing the 28 overlay.
So it stays in place.
It stays in place,
Stays in
because
place.
it's become evident to us that there's way more to do than remove the 28 overlay.
Yep.
Because what?
It's come seemingly obvious that there's more to do than just remove the overlay. There's more that needs to be done there.
Like what?
Make sure that it works for everybody. There's three
There's two
people that.
separate things.
Yeah, we heard about taking away uses that, they're currently doing. And we've heard about the dimensions being restricted.
Yep, and we did hear that at least one property owner wasn't noticed, so
Yes.
there may be others as well.
Yeah.
We don't know.
So I do
Just
have a
to
motion.
make an attempt to notice
So-
every single.
The motion on the floor, we're gonna vote on it. All those in favor of Jake's motion, seconded by Lynn,
This is your motion to not.
This is my motion not to recommend it.
not to recommend. So all those in favor of not recommending,
Wait,
say
I
aye.
gotta understand this. Not to recommend taking it away.
I gotta pee.
Correct.
Wait a s-
So it stays
I'm
in
voting
place.
anyway.
Correct.
Stays in
wait,
place.
Oh, that's right, Tony.
Gio,
The actual
yay
word-
vote means no change. A yay vote means nothing changes.
Yeah.
Correct.
A
What
what
they're
vote?
asking us right
A
on
yes.
that.
A yes vote.
Yes vote.
A
is
yes vote,
not to make
nothing changes.
I guess I should have rescinded my thing. All right, so
This
again,
is one of the problems.
there's a
that,
motion on the floor, Mr. Chair. Can we make a vote, please?
Okay,
Roger's got a question.
Before we do anything, I'm reading it right from here. Is to take an action to